Welcome back, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the workshops throughout the afternoon and the plenaries this morning. And now we are actually moving into the last formal session of the day, which is our first keynote. And our keynote speaker today is Susana Tuisese. Susana Tuisese is Vice President for Conservation International's Pacific Islands and Oceans Program. She is actually a graduate from USP, right? And then from the university, and then from Australian National University and the University of Queensland. She served as the Conservator of Forests in the Fiji Ministry of Forests, followed by a short stint in the private sector in the pine industry, prior to becoming the Country Director of Conservation International Fiji in 2012. In 2020, she took the role of Senior Director for Conservation International's Pacific Islands and Oceans Program and became Vice President for the Pacific in 2023. In this role, she leads CI's work, Conservation International's work, strategic partnerships, and community engagement across the Pacific region. And her keynote is titled Reflections on the Foundation of Climate Resilience, the perfect title to end these days on the foundations of climate resilience. Please help me welcome Susana to the stage. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Nisambula Vinaka. It doesn't sound loud. Nisambula Vinaka. I know you've had a long day, so I won't bore you with any PowerPoint. And I hope that some of the reflections that I will share with you this afternoon will add value to many of the things that you have grasped, learned, shared, discussed over today. It is indeed an honor to be here to address you today on a matter that is of profound importance to all of us, particularly for me as a Pacific Islander. The big blue Pacific continent really is in a dire strait as it faces climate challenges, and a lot of our communities are being marginalized because of the impacts of climate change. But, you know, you come to Fiji, you see the smiley faces of our people, you see the beautiful environment that we have, the blooming coral reefs, if you've been snorkeling, our white sandy beaches. Basically, will this remain as they are? That's the question. Because of climate change, in future, will you continue to see the smiling faces of the Fijians, of the Pacific Islands, of the Global South community, of which we are part? The Pacific is really experiencing some of the most visible and challenging effects of a warming planet. Our corals, the lifeblood of our marine ecosystems, are in dire straits. Agriculture, which is central to our food security and economies, suffer unpredictable rainfall patterns and rising temperature. Our communities increasingly face the realities of displacement as part of our islands become uninhabitable due to the rising sea level. These are not only abstract concepts, but they are real. They really are affecting a lot of our small island systems. I come from the islands of Lau, on the eastern part of Fiji. And on the islands of Lau, many of our islands are really beginning to see and experience the loss in foreshore areas as the sea level continues to rise. Pacific Islands are a diverse place with many different languages, many different cultures, and with each of our nations having unique cultures, languages, traditions, histories, and challenges, we share something that is even more profound, a deep connection to our land and our seas. We are a people who have lived these lands in the rhythm of the environment for centuries. Our forefathers have adapted to the changing climate from then up until now. Yet today, as we face the new challenge of climate change, it is possibly unlikely that anything we have experienced before, that our forefathers have experienced before, is really confronting us today. Amid these changes, I hope that I can bring to you a message of hope and determination. Hope that we as the Global South are vulnerable, but yet we are also resilient. In the various communities that we come from, we see the resilience of our people, and together we can build a future that is not only sustainable, but also thriving. Resilience is in our DNAs. Throughout history, our ancestors built their lives upon a foundation of resourcefulness and ability to adapt. Today, it is our responsibility to carry that forward, that legacy, facing the challenge of climate change with the same strength, utility, and ingenuity that our forefathers had done. In the deliberation today, I note that we have explored the evolving concepts of climate resilience and its definitions in the various ways and forms that it has been expressed. We have unpacked climate resilience in the context of climate mitigation, climate adaptation, and disaster risk reductions. We have noted that while climate resilience is central to global sustainability efforts, it is not only an environmental challenge, but it presents an opportunity to integrate social equity and economic stability within our communities. We note examples where fostering climate resilient development in developing countries can provide opportunities to create efficient, equitable, and inclusive responses to climate change. I note and I hope that you have enjoyed the various workshops that you were involved in today. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that it is not just an environmental matter, or not only the environment under threat. Climate change exacerbates social inequalities. It deepens poverty and increases the risk of conflict. As such, our responses must not only focus on mitigating the environmental damage, but also focus on securing the livelihood, the health, and dignity of our people. We must place human well-being at the heart of our climate action and responses. In our part of the world, particularly in the Pacific, each country is significantly different, as evident in the languages. There are many different languages that are expressed across the Pacific, the cultures of our communities. And such a vibrant diversity of cultures and environment and social economic conditions dictate really that for climate adaptation and responses, we must consider not a one fit for all communities, but special considerations for each community, the challenges that they're facing, so that it's a strategic and a targeted effort in responding to climate change. The task that really is before us requires bold decisions. It requires long-term planning and collaboration at every level of the society, from local communities to strong Pacific and Global South partnership and governance instruments to the global stage. But above all, it will require deep commitment to climate justice and sustainability, as well as political leadership and action. The cost of inaction are something we cannot afford in this region. Our forefathers, as I've alluded to, required and have acquired knowledge over time and passed down practices, skills, wisdom from generation to generation. Knowledge of food system, agriculture, architecture, construction, fishing practices, food preparation and preservation, medicinal and healing innovations, navigation, social relationships, communal living through extended family circles, and storytelling, as well as predicting weather patterns and the movement of birds and insects that are in the forest. These are many and many more of the testaments of how our forefathers had built knowledge and built their own resilience to the changing social, economic, cultural, as well as climate systems that they had gone through. In Fiji, as in many other parts of the Pacific, we have developed very strong policies on climate, national development, and so on. In Fiji, for instance, we are required to develop at the community level what we call integrated village development plans. And these are linked to in theory, but we're trying to make it really happen, district development plans. And again, these documents are linked to the National Adaptation Plan and through pathways of enhancing and supporting the management of traditional knowledge as a fundamental design element that measures the adaptation and subnational planning processes. Similarly for Fiji, we have the National Climate Change Policy and the Fiji Development Plan, as well as the Vision 2050, which also recognizes the linkage between traditional knowledge and climate resilience. In our deliberation today, I think and I hope that you have also explored some of the real-life examples of the complexities of translating such good policies on paper and in theory into action, and the roles of effective governance in fostering or impeding climate resilience efforts. The need for strong governance, effective collaboration, and context-specific solutions cannot be overemphasized. The world talks about nature-based solutions to climate change as a way to use the natural world to mitigate and adapt to climate change. In the Pacific, I like to think that given the wealth of traditional knowledge passed down through generations from our forefathers in all the facets of life, given what we know about science, we kind of take things, because we're so resourceful as it is, on a common sense solution, really, to restore, conserve, and manage our daily lives in unison with natural resource in response to climate change. As we all know, one of the biggest challenges of climate change is the frequent flooding of lowland areas, which negatively impact food supply or food systems that are repeatedly destroyed over time due to flooding. At Conservation International, allow me to just share a very quick story. We started a project in the province of Ra in 2009, designed to implement restoration regime of degraded landscapes along the Nakovanda range. This is one of the mountain ranges in the province of Ra. So we worked across 28 villages and 4 districts. And in that, we attempted to reduce really plant trees to reduce emission reductions and improve the agricultural productivity of flood-prone areas in particularly the district of Tokemalo. Over 5 years of restoration that was strategically implemented along the mid slopes of the mountain ranges, we were able to really see the proof of concept that the floodplains were no longer flooded when there was light, heavy rains, and the communities of Tokemalo were also able to harvest on an annual basis all throughout the year, root crops, vegetables, and other crops that they were planting along the valley that they occupied. Also in the district of Tokemalo, we helped incentivize communities to plant trees, and in the funds that they received from the planting, they used it to contribute to the electrification system. Today, all the villages in the district of Tokemalo enjoy electricity from the grid. One of the key interventions to ensure continuous planting of degraded areas after projects such as restoration is to ensure that the communities are able to continue to plant on their own without the supervision of the project. So in this particular project, we engaged the South Pacific Herbarium here at USP, and coupled with science and traditional knowledge, USP taught the women and the youths of the province of Ra on how to identify native trees, how to observe the flowering seasons, how to collect the seeds, germinate the seeds, preserve the seeds, And we got the Ministry of Forestry to come and help with nursery establishment among the communities. Together with the Ministry of Itoke Affairs and the Itoke Affairs Board, we then established nursery collection centers where the seedlings that were ready to be outplanted or planted in the mid-slopes of Nakawanda Range were collected with a small incentive given to the youth and the women that provided or delivered those seedlings. So through all that, we produced over 600,000 seedlings and were able to plant over 1,135 hectares of native species. And carbon calculations indicate an emission reduction estimated at 280,000 tons of metric tons of carbon equivalent over 10 years. At the end of the project, the community to date continues to thrive, continues to expand, and recently, one of the village nurseries from the village of Mborotu won a tender of 1.2 million from the Fiji government to produce over 400,000 seedlings under the Job for Nature scheme with the government of Fiji. Perhaps given all those, highlighted experiences, I would like to suggest 4 key pillars in building a climate resilient future for the Global South. First is investing in sustainable infrastructure. We must invest in sustainable infrastructure that can withstand the growing impacts of climate change. This means building more robust, resilient homes, schools, hospitals, etc., to ensure severe weather events. We must also consider traditional techniques into these structures and integrate traditional techniques into modern design. Perhaps, of course, the use of solar system and clean energy is also something that we must endeavor to capture. The second is protecting and restoring ecosystems. Nature is our first line of defense, and using nature-based solutions has been effective in the fight against climate change and building community resilience. Our coral reefs, our mangroves and forests all play a critical role in protecting us from storms, floods, and coastal erosion. They are a lifeblood of our fisheries and our food security. Protecting and restoring these ecosystems is not only an environmental priority, but also an economic one. By safeguarding nature, we protect the resources that sustain our communities while also ensuring the health of our oceans and land for future generations. There is a need to align with strong protected area targets under global conventions on biological diversities and other instruments, and ensure that legislation and policies, as well as community-based adaptations activities, are locally led solutions that our people can embrace and understand. Without a strong emphasis on conserving these resources, we will lose the very opportunity that exists just next to us. But our relationship with nature goes beyond protection. It is about restoration. It is about conserving, and we must harness traditional knowledge and practices alongside modern science to restore damaged ecosystems, rebuild our coastal defenses, and enhance our agricultural systems. Indigenous knowledge and practices have long been a cornerstone of the Pacific, in particular, Pacific resilience. And today, they must play a central role in our climate adaptation strategies. This will not only help mitigate the effects of climate change, but also create new economic opportunities for our people, from clean energy jobs to ecotourism and others. Our approach must therefore intertwine to what we deliver and do our communities, and how we can still make the progress not to be felt only today, but into the future forever. The third, perhaps, pillar is to empower communities and build local capacity. This, I think, is something that is common and something that is always emphasized across the Global South, the need to build capacity among our local communities so that local communities may become more resilient. And this includes educational investments, capacity buildings, especially for youth, women, and young leaders. We must also empower women for they are often the first responders to disasters and have a critical role in ensuring the long-term resilience of all our communities. By strengthening the voices and leadership of women, we will create a more inclusive, equitable, and effective climate solution. The last pillars I would like to suggest is to look at regional and global cooperation to ensure that climate change does not, only limit discussions of climate change is not only limited to the global south, but at the global stage. And noting, of course, that climate change does not respect borders. To secure a climate resilient future for the Pacific and the global south, we must work together across our nations, across sectors, and across generations. Regional cooperations is therefore very important. By sharing knowledge, resources, and strategies, we can enhance our collective resilience. To conclude, allow me to take us back to the world stage where the Pacific must continue to have a strong voice. And I think in this case, given the presence of our participants here, not only the Pacific, but the global South must have a very strong voice for climate action. Our calls for climate justice, for funding to support adaptation, for compensation for loss and damage, for establishing dedicated funding instruments on the Biodiversity Fund, on climate funding, in order to support the functioning high seas treating and for global community to act with urgency must be heard. The world's most powerful nations have a responsibility to support small island states like ours and small development countries in the global south, which of course contribute so little to global emissions, but bear the brunt of the impact of climate change, whether it be through debt, for nature swaps or debt forgiveness, enhancing access to private sector and funding subnational governments or buying out bonds. The opportunities are vast and our demands are only fair, but the inaction are unaffordable, unjust, and we must keep asking for an equitable world for our region. The road to a climate resilient future for the global south is long, but it is not one we must walk alone. It requires collective action among us all, and it will require that our choices, or the choices that we make today, will determine the kind of world we leave for future generations, whether they inherit a world that is devastated by climate impacts or a world thriving in the face of climate adversity. Ladies and gentlemen, participants of the conference, the challenge before us is great, but so too is the opportunity. By working together across borders, across sectors, and across generations, we can develop a climate resilient future that safeguards our environment, our economy, and our way of life. It is essential that we act now. Climate change is not waiting for anyone, and neither can we. We have the knowledge, the ingenuity, and the determination to confront this crisis head on. Our commitment to resilience is not just for the benefit of today's generation, it is for our children and our children's children, and for the generations that are yet to come. Let us embrace our resilience, drawing upon the history and the wisdom of traditional knowledge and coupling it with science and scientific knowledge that's currently coming out of researchers and institutions such as the universities around the world, and act with urgency and courage that this moment demands. Together, we have the power to shape a resilient future that integrates traditional ecological knowledge and scientific methods to ensure that our islands, our countries, our developing countries, our cultures, and our communities not only survive, but flourish in the face of climate change. I know I am between you and your dinner and other things that you have tonight. Thank you for your attention. Minaka Bakalibu.